All right, hello everybody. We are here back with Astral Kingdom. This is episode 2, where we plan to just go further into ourselves, both Alex and I. And I see there's no better way to start than our purpose in life. So, Alex, do you have any input for that, or maybe just how you go about finding your own purpose in life?
Yeah, of course. This is a really deep question, so we're just going to start there. One way that I think about, I guess, the purpose of life is kind of at the end of the day, the way I see it is just kind of like you got to make your own purpose. It's hard to kind of live off of like what other people think their purpose of life is, and I think that doesn't really translate well to like the individual self. So I think, the way I see it as my purpose is kind of um, whatever I put to it, whatever I put my mind to it, whatever makes me the happiest. So I think one thing that definitely makes me the happiest is just going after things that I really enjoy doing, and just helping other people kind of figure out what they enjoy doing, and then talk to them about like what their interests are, what they really like to do, what their passions, what they think their passions are, and then I kind of want to kind of guide them, or at least help them achieve whatever they want to do in the long run. I think that's something that um, is something that's going to really be transitioned into like the Astral Kingdom community. Going back to that is creating a space where we can talk about like what our passions are and what we want to do, and then help each other achieve those goals.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting how one's purpose is kind of rooted in like trying to help others in some kind of way. It's like you have your own purpose, but it also involves like everyone else, which
Mm-hmm.
it seems like if you bring joy to others, then you are also feeling joy, but you're also providing joy. So it's like two for one. And
Oh,
that's where I really see is like the root of most people that I've asked this question to, like their answers. And I guess my answer is no different. And for me, it's pretty much just providing some kind of good or service to others that is beneficial to them. And I see like my purpose in life should be the most like the most meaningful impact that I can make in like the world around me. And I think that is something that I'm not really going to do overnight. It seems like it's kind of like one stepping stone. I'm just trying to see how many stepping stones I can get down before my time comes.
mm-hmm.
And so that is pretty much like where we're at now. I know in my past, especially the past like 2 or 3 years, and especially since the pandemic began, I really started cranking into these projects. And I saw it as like when I was in my undergraduate classes, I can create like all this effort into a project that I present to the class and I get a grade, and that's about it. Or I can put that same amount of effort into a project that I can release on social media and improve the lives of maybe of a small niche of people, and then I can just learn from that and continuously expand. So that's something I found immense joy in recently.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one thing that we definitely share in common is we always try and like just talk to as many people as we can, and we don't really like kind of shut anyone away. It's more just kind of we enter every situation saying, what can I take away from this? Like, what can I learn from it? And just go in with an open mind. I think there's so much that people can give you with it, with even just like a little bit of information. It can really go a long way, and just taking a lot of their perspectives into account. I think a lot of times, especially in kind of the world that we live in right now, it's very kind of, it can be tribal sometimes, I think it's a lot more destructive. And one aspect that I think we both, one perspective that we do share is that we don't really have like, at least me personally, we don't really have like this massive, you know, how do I say, like we don't have a point that we stick to. We kind of look at every perspective possible and kind of understand, okay, well, like maybe these people are doing something because of this reason, or maybe they're doing something for another reason. Like it's very it's hard to, I'd say, for us to kind of take sides when we recognize that there's so many different like perspectives out there, and we're willing to kind of learn from each one. And I think that's kind of like the beauty between like our relationship.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And going into the Astral Kingdom, I feel like a part of that is I think that a lot of people have all this kind of creative energy within them that they may have either shared in their own kind of social media accounts or with the directly to people in their lives. But I think if we were able to create this community where everyone's kind of benefiting by the creation and like sharing of their own artistic creations, whether that be music, art, or
Mm-hmm.
anything like maybe entrepreneurial, and I think facilitating that with the new technology that we have available with all this like web 3.0 technology, I see that as just facilitating the growth of a community that right now is just kind of looking for that to be available to them. So besides the Astral Kingdom, do you have any like long-term plans that you have? Anything that you want to maybe like your bucket list goals?
Ooh, bucket list goals. I definitely want to travel, for sure. I definitely want to see as much as I can and meet as many people as I can. One thing I've been looking to more recently was kind of just going to a bunch of religious sites, interestingly enough. Not because I would say that I'm like necessarily very religious, but it's cool to understand the perspectives of the people that do follow those religions and understand like what their what their beliefs are and like why do they believe them. And it's such a like a deep concept. And it's religion can also be like it's a hard topic to talk about for a lot of people, but when you approach it from like a very open mind, it's really fascinating. And quite frankly, I see it as like something very beautiful, something that people put a lot of time and effort into learning and like really practicing. And you go to like these really beautiful shrines and these temples, and even the smartest people in the world like will like have some sort of belief system, and there's people that don't, and that's fine. But I think there's something to say that there like these traditions and these practices and all these religions have been around for thousands of years. And just to kind of brush them off is, I think, not the best way to approach the system. I don't think there's a right or wrong way of handling it, but I think the best way to do it is just kind of like go in with open eyes, open heart, and just kind of understand what people are doing, why they're doing it, and like what are the things that they've been able to do correctly to last this long, and obviously they've had amazing impacts on people where people dedicate their whole lives to following this religion, or they spend their whole life just whether it be fasting for days on end. People do those things because they really have these belief systems that they really want to follow. And I think that's really beautiful to just kind of approach with an open eye and really take it all in and try to understand as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something interesting that with these very like worldly spiritual events, such as like the religious centers, there's something different there compared to like an urban environment like New York City. It could be like the same kind of like architecture or like people there, but there's some kind of like there's energy in the air that just feels completely different. And I think that's something that's worth going out and experiencing firsthand. And I would say for myself, I really have this goal that it really came to fruition since the pandemic, especially like recently with these supply chain shortages. It made me feel like an intense desire to become like sovereign in my own way, where I'm not really reliant on pretty much anything or anyone besides myself. And that pretty much goes from like the large scale all the way down to like the small scale. And so I think there's things like the electricity, like water, and then your clothing, food, like there's all sorts of things that we pretty much take for granted just because someone else is making a profit off the creation of it for you. And I think it would be a pretty empowering feel to be able to create each of those myself, and being able to actually create those and like live through that. I have to learn about all these different kinds of these different fields, and I feel like maybe my actual goal is to become like a Renaissance man of some sort, where I'm just knowledgeable in all these different fields that actually pertain to my survival. So that's something I've been kind of going back and forth with, which of course like my goal is to achieve that as soon as possible, but it seems like not something I'm ready to just drop everything and go pursue.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the cool things about, both of us coming from like STEM backgrounds, and now we're kind of entering this new world where it's all about art and creativity. And so that's really kind of different from us. But one aspect, changing the subject for a second, but I'll go back to what you're saying.
Sure.
In things, even though like we are like STEM and like, a lot of science and stuff, it's hard to not compare how similar like art is and also like science, because like I bet when anyone, especially like you coming from like a neuroscience background, when you look at how like complex organisms are, that must be art, just like seeing like how all of them interact and function together. That's amazing. And on the same token, like when I'm looking at code, or when or especially like if it's well written, or just like a derivative that someone did, that's art that took some inspirational thinking. And I think that's something that people also don't realize when they're talking about like STEM major or something like that. There's a lot of art everywhere you see. You just gotta like be open to the idea of it. But going back to the idea of just being sovereign, it's kind of scary to think how reliant we are on things that we can't really control, like whether it be food shortages or, electricity outage. Sometimes, especially like I live in Florida, and so I'm very used to like having hurricanes come through. And there's a lot of times when, have to state, or at least like half of our county, won't have electricity, and there's really, besides getting a generator, there's really nothing you can do about it. And another aspect of that too is farming. That's another idea that I've been thinking about pursuing. Not now, obviously, but later in the future. It'd be cool to have like my own farm or animals, just to understand like where the food comes from, and how it benefits me, and it's nutritional for me. But at the same time, I get to see like where it's coming from, the work that's put into it, and really appreciate like all like the effort that goes into it, the animals, that the whole experience, like the relationship between the animals and I guess the feeder. I don't know how,
Yeah.
the rancher maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Farmer.
growing up like throughout school, I guess into college, I always felt this desire that I need to go into like the most urbanly populated area, because that's where all the connections are gonna be made. That's where I'm gonna like make these big business moves and everything. But like I guess in the past few years, I've kind of came to the realization that I almost kind of want the opposite of that. I want like the slow life that's just out in nature, and whether that be like in a rural area, like a farm, like you're describing, or honestly like anything. I don't really even know like where I want to call home, especially for like the foreseeable future, whether that be like short term or long term. Do you have any feelings towards that?
Yeah, dude. There's so many times when we have a friend of ours that like lives in New York City. I mean, you probably have a few friends of yours that live up north, since you're like more northern than I am.
Hmm.
But going visiting him, it's so much fun, and there's like so much going on and stuff. But then like when you take a step back, it kind of just slows down and everything goes in slow motion. So I think there's like a time and place for everything. And that's why I don't really like the idea of like planning too far ahead, because then like if the goals don't like meet up, or something doesn't work out, um, then like a lot of people just kind of lose their minds, or I wouldn't say lose their minds, but they want to really like plan out their lives. And I think that's definitely useful when you're thinking about like projects that you're working on, or something of that nature, or
Yeah.
short-term goals, but planning out like how your life's going to go in the long term, there's just too many variables that you can't really account for.
Yeah, I definitely felt that a lot when I was applying to medical schools. It felt like I was trying to envision myself in each individual location, and it felt like I was forcing myself to live in the future tense, when in reality I kind of like take a deep breath and realize like I got to enjoy my time in Virginia just while it lasts, at least in this specific location. And from there I started living with like so much more flow, and it felt like I was like not so stressed, like just in the background. And
Hmm.
that's something that I've been trying to focus more on, where it doesn't really matter like where I'm going to be, whether it be like 5 years from now, 5 days from now, or like 5 minutes from now. I really should try to like center myself and like where I'm actually like physically at right now. And that's something that I don't know if a lot of people like think about that often. I've tried doing things like almost trying to force that to happen, whether that be like through reminders on my phone, or through like an iPhone wallpaper. But the biggest thing I've found that to be useful is just taking a deep breath, like whenever I actually remember, and trying to shorten that distance between remembering. And ideally, I think the goal of meditation for many people is to be in a constant state of remembering that you are living in the present moment. And that's something that I don't think I've gotten anywhere near yet, but there's a whole world of meditation to explore.
Hmm. Yeah, dude. I mean, it definitely helps you keep calm for sure. When going into like this whole project, there's some days where we felt just on top of the world. We felt like there was nothing that was going to stop us. And there's other days where, we're so stressed, and we're thinking about like, how is this going to work, and figuring out all these issues. And it's funny because like there's always kind of like this balance that takes place. Like some days it's great, some days it's not so great. But I'd say most of the time it's kind of just like us living in the moment, and really just trusting like ourselves, listening to like our minds, listening to our bodies, like meeting the physical needs, meeting the emotional and like the mental needs that our bodies are asking of us. And then also just kind of letting the universe like take control of things that we really don't have control over. It's hard when you're managing a bunch of different aspects to it, and then things aren't working exactly how you turned out, how you thought they were supposed to be. But what I've been noticing more and more, especially like when it comes to like either school, my private life, or even this project, sometimes you just kind of gotta like let go of the reins, responsibly, of course, but just be like, you can't control everything, and sometimes you just gotta take a step back, breathe in, breathe out, and say, you know what, at some point I've done as much as I could, I did the best that I can, and keeping that positive energy and keeping that positive mindset, I think it really does make a difference. So I think that's one aspect that you got to incorporate when you're kind of giving it up to the universe, that you have to have the faith that things will work out as long as you're doing your best and really pushing yourself to your limits.
Yeah, I think that emotional understanding of what's happening within, that's something that I've been trying to be like more practical about. And in the sense that maybe I'll go to work for my 8 hours, then I'll come back home and I'll sit down with like maybe listening to some kind of like meditation sound. I'll just close my eyes and I'll kind of do a rewind of my whole day. And I'll kind of find the spots that didn't really sit well with me, like kind of in a reflection or maybe in the moment. I realized like, oh man, that was a cringy moment. I should have done this or that. And I'll first kind of go through like a playthrough. I'm like, all right, this is what happened. This is how I feel. And I kind of really try to understand exactly how I feel right now and also how I felt in the moment. And then sometimes I'll even go back and I'll do like a rewiring of the event where I'll play it out however I felt like I should have played it out in like my most ideal sense of like paths taken. And that ultimately leads me to feel better while also giving me more of an understanding of like what I could do next time if I'm in a similar situation. So I don't know if that's a great thing to be spending your whole day doing, but definitely I found use in doing that midday and then once at night before I fall asleep.
Yeah, dude, I see a lot of people that they get into like journaling and stuff like that just to kind of like reflect on the day. I personally don't do that. I'm not great into writing, or I think you've noticed that I'm not awesome at taking notes. But one thing is definitely like I think a lot of people should spend a lot more time on reflecting about like their days and like their actions. You know, it's very easy to like not face those head on. It's really easy not to and just kind of like forget about it. But I think it's when you take the time to look at what you've done and maybe mistakes that you've made and just saying and accepting them. You know, I think that's a huge part, just accepting that you've made mistakes. And, you know, the best thing to do at that point is just kind of like move on. The more you dwell on it, the more it's going to like slow you down and kind of impede or inhibit like any progress that you're trying to make. And I think in life, like you just got to realize that, you know, the only way that you're going to make any progress is just kind of like making mistakes and messing up and realizing that you're making these mistakes and messing up. And then, like you were saying, just kind of envision like how you would approach a situation differently.
Yeah.
You know, people seem a lot of times like really prepared to do things, and I think it's important for like us to and everyone to understand that, you know, it doesn't just happen overnight. You know, this is a progress thing of just kind of constantly trying to make yourself better every single day.
Yeah, in any way that makes the most sense to you each day. And
Mhm.
going back to like the journaling that you mentioned before, I actually am not a fan of handwriting anything. I found that even texting on my phone, like typing, is not even my best way of doing that. So I actually do have like these prompts that I try to answer each night. But I've been exploring other methods of actually like detailing my thoughts. And so I first started with like drawing with my finger on my phone and like trying to recreate like an imaginal scene that like embodied whatever, whether it be a lesson or like just thought that I'm trying to like put onto the journal prompt. And that didn't last too long because my handwriting is awful, whether I'm like my eyes are open or closed. And so recently I've just been doing like these voice texts, and I
Mm.
feel like it helps me like just take my thoughts from like the internal down to the external and try to be as clear as possible, even though I may be very, very sleepy. So I found that to be useful and just trying to break out of the mold that like you have to handwrite your journal notes, and that
Mm.
of course is not the case. And I actually even tried to go so far as like create my own kind of journaling app. I didn't get very far, but it's definitely something I'm putting in the back pocket for now. But I think there's a lot to learn from all that.
Yeah, that actually kind of brings up an interesting question that I have, like for you actually. You know, a lot of people don't like listening to their own voices when it's being recorded, like myself included. Does it ever like affect you when you're listening back to those voice memos that you have?
Honestly, I see that more as like a defense mechanism, like where you don't want to really like deal with the message that you're listening to, and you're trying to like focus more on like the surface level issues that you may have. It could almost be like indicative of like you're not proud of like what you're sharing, and you're maybe not even speaking it with like true like internal confidence. So I think there's a lot of aspects to that. Like personally, I used to feel that way like a lot. I would like kind of dwell on that, but I especially if I'm like recording like these 30-second clips and I know I'm tired, I'm listening to them when I'm tired. It's not like any different than what I'm about to like repeat. So I don't really get too focused on it.
Okay, so it's more just about like the content that you're making.
Yeah, but when I was drawing the pictures, that's something I would judge pretty hard. Those are so bad. But yeah, the voice so much not too bad. But I still don't think that's the best way. And I think ultimately the best way is going to be if you're like able to take your internal thoughts and just like translate those into like ideas that other people are able to understand. I know like Neuralink's a potential for that, but that's where things get kind of confusing and I don't know, a little untrustworthy if I'm not
Mhm.
if I'm doing it through like a third party. So for now, I think I'm just trying to explore and find what's best for me.
Yeah, and going into that whole Neuralink thing, that connects like the whole idea of consciousness and that whole realm, and that's something that I personally am comfortable saying I don't know anything about, and I could probably spend a long time trying to learn about it and not even come close to some of the experts and philosophers that have spent decades doing that type of stuff. Um, oh no,
Yeah, I mean,
continue.
I was just thinking about that. It's like if we're all like conscious beings, and like why don't we all have like the ability to find the answer? Do we really need to spend like years of our lives digging so deep into to find the answer, or is it ultimately just like as surface level as us being able to understand like that this is a question that's worth asking?
Mhm.
I'm not too sure about that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I kind of similar to that idea. I came to terms with, as I said earlier, like not super religious or anything, but like one thing that I kind of came to the conclusion. I've read a few books by some people that will consider themselves atheists and stuff like that, just like in the science realm and stuff. And the one thing that I ended up coming to terms with is that one, I am not smart enough to determine whether or not there is, a right answer to anything. I'm not smart enough. And two, it takes a lot of energy to convince myself one way or the other. So I think it's more important personally for myself to spend that energy doing things that I enjoy doing, which is like helping people figuring out what they enjoy doing. So I think it's really easy to get lost in these like really, really deep um,
Yeah.
and borderline existential questions when, like we were saying, and the whole point of like what we kind of live our lives by is just kind of like live in the present and do what makes you happy, as long as you're like not harming anyone, but at the same time just find your own meaning in life, and pursue that.
Yeah, so we would actually love to hear everyone that's listening, hear what your purpose in life is, and if you have anything that really want to speak from the heart, feel free to do so. The Discord channels should provide an open forum for that to happen, or the comments below. Yeah, Alex, any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just now I've got my brain just going crazy right now. But
Yeah, the next episodes we'll have to go deeper into it.
yeah, this is really good. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, just a little bit more about who we are without any solid prompts like the first video. And we'll probably go deeper into the project itself for the next few videos and try to definitely get more team members involved. But for now, this is just a little bit deeper into peeling the layers back of ourselves. So yeah,
Hmm.
hope you guys
Yeah,
enjoyed.
this is gonna be fun.
Sure will. All right, peace.
Peace.